Hi, and welcome to Conversations with Corina, Archaeology for the Soul, where we re-enter our story and we excavate what matters for us to heal inside and find a way to be present in our lives, to be fulfilled, to be happy, and in the process, find our voice if we need to, and how we can use that voice to share it with others and help others learn and grow and heal in their lives. I have started this channel because I really, really, really believe that in these times we need to heal. We need to let go of the baggage, and to do that, we must do our contribution to the universal puzzle. And I believe that as we gather together, as we learn from experts that have walked the path, there are thought leaders in our communities, we can all heal. And as we heal each other and we heal the world. With this in mind, I have with me here today, Vima Lamura. Vima is a vocalist, composer, speaker, poet, and author. Since the age of 12, the potent experience of sound inspired immersion in East Indian, Tibetan, and Mid-Eastern chanting, music, practices, and teachings that has cultivated her unique voice, compositions, and life's work in the arts. Vima Lamura forges creative and spiritual works that serve as innovative expressions, bridging spirit, science, mystical, and human experiences, inspiring vision and beauty for audiences for 35 years. Vima has 7 CDs to her credit. She's written and published 4 books, and she writes a spiritual column for the international women's magazine, Nurir. Her writings have been featured in Om Times magazine, and she has created a series of courses and retreats ushering ascended understanding of the interface between deep spirituality and self-actualized living. Vima has been a recipient of grants and fellowship for composition, world beat operas, and performances from the McKnight Foundation, Jerome Foundation, and the American Composers Forum. Welcome, Vima, and so happy to have you with us.
I am so happy to be here with you. Mahalo nui loa, Corina. Thank you.
And Vima is all the way in Honolulu today. She woke up early to be with us, and we are so grateful for the opportunity to learn from you, to be with you, to be in your presence. And so I would like to start our conversation today with a quote I found on your website. And it sounds like this. It's a sonnet from the sun. And it says this: fear of death and suffering may be the root of chaos. Once suffering and death are understood rather than resisted, the perfume of liberation tempers all facets of mind. Duality finds its final resting place, unified in the heart. Mind becomes unbound and pure, awakened in its natural state of light. I so love your poetic way of expression. As I met you as a poet, and now I know so much more than your poetry. And you can tell us a little bit about what brought you to write this way, this quote, and tell us what made you who you are today, what brought you to this wisdom you have today, and thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you, Corina, for this opportunity. That is a quote from a blog I've been writing very occasionally, and it's based on a near-death experience. And what I was saying is the process of the experience of the near-death experience, as well as the process of healing from the near-death experience, has been a huge component in cultivating, my voice, choices of musical compositions and performances and things of that sort. and now evolving more and more into conversations, teaching, sharing, things of that nature, as well as integrating aspects of the arts, because the arts is a wonderful platform for transpersonal expression, where we cultivate the self, thus the audience gets the fragrance, the perfume of it all. As well as, of course, it's necessary to have to work hard on an instrument or skills and develop that so that there is also works that are pleasing to the eye and to the heart. So the near-death experience was, I think I have it titled Realm of the Thousand Suns on the blog. And it was all about a journey through suffering and understanding, having a deep experience of what suffering is and what has been revealed to me. And I always feel that throughout my whole life, what makes me what I am today was more of a process of surrendering, if you want to call it the me, than it is a process of my choices. So, given circumstances, there are methods and means to go within in order to make certain choices which have an impact on direction. But I would have to say, in all honesty, that if I had my way, my life would have been different. And this is why I always feel that what it is that I do in this world and how I express it or do it through this instrument is more or less something that chose me. And the most challenging thing is to resist that. And that's one aspect of suffering. People are looking for their purpose, for their goal, for their purpose in life. And purpose is to unfold to the self. Let go of everything we believe and think we are, the identities from cultural identity to gender identity, and come down to the bare bones of loving oneself. And this is taught by many sages, by many gurus and teachers, and perhaps put in different words, but it's true. And I can honestly say that now from an experiential perspective. Before I would listen and I would say, oh, that sounds so wonderful, Guruji. Mahalo, that sounds so good, you know. But what is loving myself? How does suffering end? Who is the self? What is the self? What is the I? What is the me? And no matter how much that has been imparted to me, I never realized it until I actually experienced it.
Can you share with us that experience you had with the Thousand Suns and how that became so important to you?
Prior to that, I was in the music industry and I was involved in meditation and yoga, very, very interested in the ancient teachings, ancient music, ancient sounds, ancient instruments, whatever. It was a call that is ancient to the point that it's so ancient, it's cosmic in origin. But I could never express it because this was the music of my soul. This was the heart of how I wanted to express myself. However, to make a living, you have to It was necessary to create other music. And a week before we were going into the studio on a contract, I went through a windshield of a car.
Mm.
And in that experience, I died. My body died. I left my body, however you may want to term it. There's so many different meanings to death experiences and near-death experiences, or leaving your body, whatever. All I know is through that experience, I was in what I call the realm of 1,000 suns. I was light. I was particles of light. That's all I was. To put it into words, it was beyond the states of pure consciousness. And in that place, I saw where consciousness takes form.
Mm.
I saw myself as absolutely perfect. And I was telling everyone that was there, the paramedics, to just let me be. I'm fine. Just let me be. And my former husband was on the side. I remember him having his face in his hands, kneeling to the side. And I was saying, I'm fine. And I was lit up. My body was lit up.
Mm.
I was light. I saw myself as light. One of my legs was hurt very badly. And of course, my head very badly hurt, but I saw no injuries. That wasn't at all visible. When I came back into my body, and this is, I will never forget that feeling of that paramedic putting his hand on my chest, because I sat up and I told my husband at the time to call the hotel. We're going to be late. I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. And while in the realm of 1,000 suns, it was like this incredible vortex of sound and light.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was there. I was there. There were no relatives, no tunnels, really. I didn't have experiences that I've heard with others in support groups and things. But this was just pure light, smack dab, zip, right there. And so when I came into my body, there was nothing. I thought there was nothing wrong, but I realized when I looked down that I was covered in blood. And they took me to the hospital. And all I wanted to do was go back. I had no inclination or interest to be where I was. It was a strange land all over again. It was almost like a rebirth, so to speak.
Mm.
And it was then, that particular experience, how that influenced my work in music. When I look back, for so many years, I had many visions and experiences about music and composition that I wasn't confident enough to create. Again, in an environment where you have managers and musicians and musical directors and things that more or less are assisting you in getting the deal, or doing the concert or doing the theatrical performance, whatever it may be, and thinking in terms of surviving, being able to survive while in the music business is an accomplishment in and of itself. So there was that compromise within me, and after the accident, it didn't exist anymore. I saw so many things with people that I worked with in the industry that I felt they were not giving people vibrationally uplifting information, vibrationally uplifting music, and everything was kept on an emotional, dense level, even in terms of how instruments were played and the music composition itself. it took many, many years for me as well, with, of course, creating the operas and creating music, but it took many years after that to align myself with producers that were on the same page I was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, going back to the realm of 1,000 suns, when I was in the hospital, I could remember the truck driver that called the accident in, and he came in with his wife because the fellow at the store mentioned that it was in a small town in Forsyth, Georgia. He mentioned that there was another accident in that area, a collision. And he said, I saw it. I'm the one that radioed it in, and the lady died. And the storekeeper said, no, she's in the hospital. She's alive in the hospital. So the truck driver and his wife came in, and we had a conversation. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I was lucid enough to be able to interact with him to some degree. But while I was there, when you have a head injury, they don't really let you sleep. They give you constantly wake you up and give you information or ask you information. Trite things like your name and how old you are and, the name of your husband and where you live and things of that nature. And he asked me, he said, did you see the lady, did the lady in the car visit you? And I thought, no one came to visit me other than you. And I remember in the realm of 1,000 suns looking over and seeing this huge ball of light with blue and purple extensions going into infinity. And I was looking at that, and I couldn't see anybody or anything physical, but there was like a frame. If you saw this magnificent light in a car, you wouldn't see much of the car. All you'd see is the light, but there'd be a trace of a frame there. And I just said no, but I flashed back to that, remembering seeing that. And he said there was a lady who pulled up behind him that was praying. And I thought, wow, that's what prayer looks like. I've said this story many times, but I can't help but feel that the words we speak, the words we think, and the placement of our hearts in that expression is vitally important, and that we are potent beings of light and love. It was amazing. And in the second death experience, I saw the same thing with the nurse when I flatlined. That she became this light, and I remember her, I won't go into detail about the second one, but I remember seeing her when I was in the realm of 1,000 suns again. I remember seeing her slumping down, and then she put her hands together in Guru Pranam, and she started to pray, and all of a sudden she became this light, and it was the same intensity, the same coloring, the same visual as the lady that was praying in the car. That made an impact, and that made an impact on always remembering that the lyrical content of music will be something that is generated from a place of light, from that place of Pule. That Pule is Hawaiian for prayer. That place of Pule Puja, prayer, but not prayer in a sense that we know it, but prayer in a sense of that wellspring of light from the heart to the tongue. That light that magnifies from the spirit into the soul through the skin. And that in and of itself was the transformational process in musical performances.
So how do you think we can access this place you're talking about, this light, not only in these circumstances, but a living aspect of our life. So we can live with this light always, not only when something traumatic like this happens and a different world is opened up to us or to people that go through that.
It's simple, but it's not very simple. The healing process from those experiences, everything from physical, endocrine, mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual, soulful, required a tremendous breakdown of everything, every aspect of the existence that I thought I was. It had to go. So to evolve to the point where there is the end of suffering requires surrender to the self and love. Simple. And what is love? Yes. What is that surrendering? Now, mind you, I was doing meditation and yoga prior to those experiences. Meditation continued to be a very, very integral, important part of my process. And I used sound to heal my physical body. And without medication, without, how do you say, pain medication, depression like I had never experienced, that despair of being here and realizing that it's not only that despair was the undercurrent of that despair was the longing to merge with my divinity. That nothing else mattered in my life but that. And I didn't realize it until things were taken away from me. I had these seizures where I would lose control of my arms and legs. And I would sit and I would breathe, meditate, and do sound and feel the synapses start to connect, feel things connecting again. And then eventually I was able to move and walk, even thinking. I couldn't think what we call normally anymore. That was not, no matter how much I tried. I even took a real estate course in trying to get my cognitive abilities back. I was going to go back to college and take some, language classes and things to get but the timing wasn't working, but there was a real estate course and I thought I'll do that, which was very helpful for memory, helpful for a lot of things. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of information about near-death experiences and head injuries other than what I got from the doctors. And what I got from the doctors, I did not necessarily feel it was right for me, because I knew in the depths of me there was a spiritual experience, and my body was merely the vehicle of experiencing so that I would be able to create environments, create music, create speaking talks, whatever, to create in order to create transcendental experiences for others.
So this happened a long time ago, right?
Oh, it happened a long time ago. And I'm still learning from it. I had a wonderful teacher who was a Taoist monk, and he taught me a system of sound in the Taoist system of sound. He taught me, and that integrated with more intuitive, internal, meditative applications. I was able to heal cartilage damage, bone damage, heal everything. And one of the main components was remembering remembering consciousness comes into form. And I have this quote saying, sound is the thread between consciousness and form. And so the sound was my medicine. So all this in saying, when we talk about suffering in the world, there are many, many ways people are suffering. One of the most important things to remember is that it's all created, not because we wanted it, but because there is a play of duality, a play of opposition that works like that works as breaking the seeds to the self. It breaks the shell of identity, duality, and beyond good and bad, right and wrong. Those are all mental constructs. When you're in a place where you realize the play of opposition, the play of opposites, the play of duality, you're able to witness it with such incredible grounding in your divinity that it is impossible to be swayed by it and consequently, karmically deal with the consequences of it. There is so much around us that is going on, and it's all serving, we can say it's serving a purpose for our lessons. And I think we mentioned this, there's no such thing as a lesson. It's really a dynamic of energy that has got a lot of opinions, a lot of mind, a lot of thought put into what it's all about, interpretation. But when you strip it bare, it is energy. And the oppositional energy it's an energetic force that is begging to be transformed, because we all know in the depths of ourselves that it doesn't feel good. And suffering on any level is not a good feeling. And people are suffering so much that they don't even know they're suffering. But they continue to perpetuate a sense of ignorance and not so good feelings for others. I work with some women from the Mideast who have very, very, very oppositional forces to their feminine nature. A lot of suffering, a lot of hurt, domestic violence. I've seen a lot of that both in India and in the Mideast. And the beauty of it is that they are now finding their way within themselves through meditation. That they're collecting in private groups, and even in the midst of the turmoil that they're living with in their social and domestic environment, they have a way to access themselves, and bit by bit, from that place of self-examination, from that place of internal observation, their capacity to start transcending from it and developing more spiritual strength is happening. So no matter what our environment is, no matter what is happening, that is, to me, the essence and I could say truth, but the source of our liberation from suffering. Another aspect is, when I learned what I learned in the healing process, was the resistance of pain. That resisting pain is also a source of suffering. and any kind of pain. I'll never forget this time of depression. I went through that phase of despair. All I remembered doing was going into meditation and just not diving into it like being submerged into it, but coming from a place attuned into the breath, remembering that light and bringing that consciousness through. And really moving through it as an observer, as opposed to being absorbed by it, because that kind of energy can really take you for a ride. And underneath it all was tremendous grief. And the grief was, at least the grief was for me, things that had happened in the past in childhood, but also grieving an old life, which is tremendously frightening. But it had to be worked through, and meditation was the key for me, as well as allowing the feelings to come through. And there were times when feelings came through right in the middle of the grocery store. There was just no choice. I'd say, okay, cool, you've got me. Okay, whatever, let me just be. And I could see the dynamic of energy happening. So I think one of the biggest clues, one of the biggest helpful suggestions I could make, as there are many, is to start observing the dynamic of energy that works within you. Because when you can observe that and not be affected by it, your capacity to access your light, the capacity to access the divinity of your being, of your soul, comes back into a remembrance that is steep, deeper than DNA. And it just washes like warm milk in all of your cells.
So when you mention vibration, maybe not everybody's accustomed to the term vibration. Is that something that people can think in terms of feelings and emotions, or values they adhere to, or things they are attracted to?
Forget values, forget about everything. When you're in that place, you're really observing how your thoughts cultivate your actions, how your feelings imprint, samskaras, vasanas, all of these things are the source of your action as opposed to your divine self. So when you are, I can just say this for myself, but I've seen it happen. I'm seeing it happen to these beautiful women overseas. When you are in a place of that level of seeing the activity between your viscera and your mind and how it affects your heart, that dynamic moving through, step back, because all it is energy. So energy always has a vibrational component to it, yeah? And just understand, strip it bare. Strip it bare. And
go ahead.
And just see it as energy. And the way you can transform it is simply watching your breath. We will talk about this in the third session. There will be a meditation technique that I will be giving in the third session that will really help a lot in the process of observing energy that moves within you. But today I'd like to simply cover information about creating an environment where you are able to start thinking and seeing and observing. And it's amazing. It's amazing when you become aware of it. I've had people say, Vima, I don't have time for this and I don't have time for that. But to me, we are a holograph. We are our 10 bodies, our physical body, causal body, we are emotions, we are thought, etc. But the truth of all of that is the spine, the sushumna, the life force of spirit, and our supreme intelligence is the core. So when we are free of the mind, when we're free of our ideas of who we are, if we're free of beliefs, we're able to really look at, why do I believe this? Because with this belief, even cultural beliefs, gender beliefs, now we're working on all of this gender equality now, when in truth, we're just dealing with people that have energy, and energetic forces that attract in certain situations or certain other energies. It's nothing more than that. It doesn't matter if you're wearing a pink dress or a blue dress. It doesn't matter if you see yourself as a woman or a man. It's so irrelevant. But people are still dealing with, having to struggle to live when they are here, and suffering because of it, and suffering because there is some imprint in the social and collective consciousness that say you can have energy in this direction, you can't have energy in that direction. Even people who are celibates, there's ideas about people who are celibates, people who are gay, people who are heterosexual, people who are boys, people who are girls, men, women.
For sure, we live in a world.
What about your junk?
With social identities and labels on everything. It seems to be a world that is labeled, and there is a label for everything.
Exactly. And it's like, strip away your ideas. I would say anybody who listens to this, start observing your thoughts about who you think you are, or who you think someone else is, who your affinities are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember growing up, I was oldest of many, many children, and, oh, you're such a good girl. By whose standards am I a good girl? Because in some way, I'm being given responsibilities that are really a lot for a young girl. And that is my reward, is being called a good girl, when deep down inside, didn't feel so good about it. There was love there, but I didn't feel good about that. So there are so many deep things, so many deep things. And it got to the point where I started, this is honest, but I started feeling a resentment toward being human, because I wanted to go back to who I was, because I've had that taste of ice cream. I've had the taste of it. The second death experience, I was extremely angry that I came back. And no matter how many times people would say, oh, you're here for a purpose, you're here, blah, blah, blah. That was all blah, blah to me. Until I woke up and realized, hey, I've had the fortunate experience of this healing process. I've had the fortunate experience to be conscious and aware in the realm of 1,000 suns. Now, how in heaven's name am I going to be able to help myself and create transpersonal situations where I can give this to others? Aha. And in that, whether it's through the arts, whether it's through these beautiful interviews with you, whether it's through singing or whatever it may be, whatever this instrument is capable of doing, writing,
yes,
I'm going to do it. And that's what gives me fulfillment.
Absolutely.
That's what makes me thrive in life, and that's what gives me the joy of being here. So personally, it's not, there's nothing there. accept that experience of joy or experience of sadness or that experience, but observe the mind. I spent a lot of time in India.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually see it's a beautiful, beautiful culture, and you can actually see the collective imprints of cultural tradition that is so deeply embedded, it's natural in the DNA. And there are ideas and thoughts and suffering because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't go into explicit detail, just in a couple of instances where, you know, I met a few women that have been victims of acid attacks. Yeah. However, working through it, working with meditation, not going into having to forgive, but dealing with the feelings of being in that state, and really for years just unfolding the idea that they're unworthy women. Just the idea that they can't marry again, that they're ruined for life. But hey, they still have eyes that can see. They still have the capacity to create. They still love their children. So there are many things now that I'm seeing with them that they no longer identify with what had happened to them. That the cultural shame, you know, and the men were never brought to justice. But they got to the point where that didn't matter anymore because their lives were so full and developing into a richness of expression.
Yes.
Of their divinity. One of them loves sitting in meditation 4 hours a day. She says, now I know who I am.
Yes.
I mean, you know.
I remember in my own experience, I came to understand that I'm not what happened to me. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a quote from Jung, if I can recall, you're not what happens to you. That gave me the freedom to let go of that. It was the start of my journey. When I realized I am not what happened to me.
Yes.
So there was a huge step in my own healing process. As you are mentioning this, I recall that.
And it's so much more than words, when words can impact you that way, to where you're taken aback.
Yeah, but take it in.
And take it in.
Take it in. Mm-hmm. And my question for you is, you mentioned something about the heart. We talked about the heart a little bit. We mentioned the heart. How do you see the connection between heart, mind, soul, and who we are now, who we have been in the previous lives? This mind-body connection, heart connection. Tell us a little bit about how you look at this, the body as a vehicle that can heal and can give us wisdom, and then the mind, body, heart connection.
I feel that the mind, or rather the heart connection, is what heals the body.
The mind?
And the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the viscera. The stuff, those imprints that are in the visceral intelligence. The heart has chambers that beholds a consciousness. Mm. In the realm of 1,000 suns, it's beyond heart. Mm. It's beyond heart, it's beyond spirit. There's no, that's why I call it the realm of 1,000 suns. It's beyond emptiness. It's like that realm of emptiness, and beyond that, it's like, I can't even put it into words. However, that is connected to the heart. Mm. There's a whole lot of mind that has to be transformed to access that heart. Mm. Whole lot of willingness to strip naked and awaken yourself to where you become aware that you access your heart in speaking, access the heart in dealing in situations. Understand too, sometimes the mind and conditioning will go into, enabling yourself and others and thinking this is a way to cope, but it's not the truth of the heart. The heart has an intelligence and a discernment. When something doesn't feel good, you take appropriate discerning action.
Yeah. It's the gut feeling, right? That's the heart.
And that's where the relationship between the gut is the place of action.
Yes.
The gut is the place of that sense of cosmic, heartfelt responsibility where, wow, this doesn't feel right and I have to honor this, or this feels right. And people say, oh, the vibration, oh, the energy wasn't right, or this or that. And, really, you don't even need to put mind on it. You don't even need to say that. It's just, there's this beautiful, supreme intelligence that just knows. And as you strip more and more away, the more you allow this intelligence to move through you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm writing a course. Well, it's been written, but I'm changing it, and I'm changing it into a workbook, because I feel that now is the time for the language of magnificence, and that's what it's called, the language of magnificence. It is reframing languaging, so that it comes from the heart, viscera, and mental intelligences in conjunction with higher discernment and higher knowing, more refined knowing, more subtle knowing. So there's one particular chapter called Kindness is Contagious. And mind you, every chapter, every section of this workbook will have an exercise that you do for 2 weeks. And so the simple exercise is, everything you say, everything you think has to be kind.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
And how to do that. And I feel the end of suffering begins with every individual doing the inside work, doing the inside job. The end of suffering is an individualized process. But as we get into more of the subtle, as we experience more of the subtle energies, as we disrobe from the dross that weighs us down and gets us entangled in the nonsense that really has no effect in our lives other than it being nonsense, the whole energetic balance of humanity will come into a different framework, into a completely different dynamic. Because really, when you look at it, there's so much talk about who influences, entities, all of that. Bottom line is, yes, these things exist, but who are you in the process? Are you going to be a player in that game? Or are you going to find your own supreme intelligence and work from that? And in that is where everything connects. Everything connects. Everything. I remember being on Fraser Island in Australia. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in a circle of trees. Excuse me. And the circades had a rhythm and a song. So one section would sing here, one section would sing there, another section, and they were calling and responding to each other. So I decided to join in the party. And we came around in circle, and I paused. And they waited for me to do my part. That was so amazing to me, because we were all connected. And where the sound was coming from with me was such a beyond intuitive, instinctual, beyond, it was pulsing from the heart that tuned into the heart of where these circades were coming from, where the melody of the circades. Where does this come from?
Mm.
So when we talk about working with suffering, it's a matter of changing how we dialogue within ourselves. That's another thing. Observe, change, create the change. Because again, sound is the thread between consciousness and form. Access, even though you don't necessarily have to go through a windshield of a car to experience consciousness. However, meditation has taken me far beyond that point, to that state of remembrance, to that state of working with the cosmic physics of our existence, beyond the physical, beyond the emotional. And believe me, in meditation too, there are times when there's so much fear that happens because you're going to die. You think your existence is going to die. And then realizing that existence is just an illusion and you surrender to it, brings you to another. Same thing with pain. Pain in its own design heals itself. You surrender to it and you watch. Observe the dynamic of energy. Observe what is moving through the body, through the nervous system. Observe it. Observe it. Breathe through it.
Mm.
We are told and conditioned to suffer.
Sure, I totally agree.
It's all around us. It's all around us.
Mm-hmm. Ancient books are telling us that we're going to suffer as human beings, right? So,
and the thing is,
we're conditioned to that.
To see it more as states of consciousness, to see it more as dynamics of energy, to see it more as something that you have control over, that you have the capacity to access your supreme intelligence, to access your heart, to observe.
I'm thinking, as you mentioned this, I can feel so many people around us are so afraid to be hurt, but by what's going outside, and they walk around with a closed heart. And in that process, nothing comes in, nothing goes out, right? You're closed, you're afraid of what could hurt you from outside. But in the process of closing your heart, that's where, to me, suffering happens, in that closed heart. When you don't let anything come to you, or even what you let go out of you, it's so minimal, because you're constantly in this protective mode, because you don't want to suffer pain of any kind.
Contraction. The second one feels pain, they contract. No matter what kind of pain, there's a contraction.
Mm-hmm.
And that serves a purpose. That serves a purpose. It's an energetic dynamic. Contraction. I can easily say breathing and observing that you're contracting are ways to start unlocking it, are ways to start revealing pain as a window or a door to transformation. It's not to say that when something, and again, here's higher discernment, I embrace anger. And I know that within me there is a barometer of what is important there is a barometer of boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, when someone's not listening, I do believe in appropriate anger. I do believe it doesn't have to be the fire that consumes you, that motivates what you do, the source of what you do, but it can be the fire of awareness that something is not correct and expressing it so.
And then remove yourself from a situation, or
remove yourself from the situation. There's a lot about anger and suffering and fear.
mm-hmm.
But I do feel too now we're going to be seeing we're seeing anger that's put into effect in the way that some people feel is important to create change. And it just has to get to that point where that oppositional force is so intolerable.
Yes.
That you have to do something. And so this isn't, and I don't mean to make this conversation all about, so cosmic, et cetera, but that to me is how I process. But as in other situations too, there is a personal aspect that has to take in the information of the higher intelligence. It has to take in the information of discernment. And it's where the higher mind comes in and how to deal with it.
Mm.
And sometimes some situations just require a good yell and cut it out. And in some situations, it does require, depending on what you're dealing with, a conversation. So that again, that is where the heart takes play. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily have to be consumed by the anger. However, the discernment tells you that a response gives you the appropriate response to something external.
I feel that in these times we live in, or I feel we all came here with a purpose, with something to give back, or we are working on ourselves to be our best version so we can contribute to this universal puzzle, to the intelligence mind, with the best part of who we are, with the best aspect of who we are. And sometimes if we stay in situations that are not productive, that light inside it dims, it cannot shine. We cannot do the work we are here to do. So I believe it's important to create that environment for us where we can thrive and we can be our best and do what we feel in our heart we are called to do.
We look at Mother Nature. We look at the natural dynamic of the earth. You can only push her so far, and she's going to respond.
Mm-hmm.
We look at the dynamic of weeds in a garden. If you have an idea that there are weeds in the garden, people are going to pull the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, there's something to learn about the weeds. And what there is to learn about the weeds is there's abundance everywhere. There's intelligence everywhere. They exist for a reason. So, Mother Nature, at some point, our physical bodies are elemental.
Mm-hmm.
Our nervous system responds to the frequency of the earth. Our co-creative intelligence brings new life into form. And tapping back into the remembrance of this, a whole shift in dynamic of respect of where we are and who we are will take place.
Mm-hmm.
So now we just have to unveil, become aware of what is within us that keeps us in that contractual state, that keeps us in this state of fear, that keeps that maintains the concretized cubes, the concretized consciousness for our quote safety unquote, when in truth it is the source of our death. And I mean death in a spiritual sense, in a conscious sense. So suffering is an amazing thing. And I'd say also, I would suggest also, really look at what we believe suffering is. Bottom line, pain is something that just doesn't feel good and we respond to it. But whether or not we get absorbed by it is another thing. And how to transcend it, start with awareness. And from that awareness, the capacity of techniques and methods work.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk about meditation, it is for me, it is that purity of communion with myself, with source, whatever. A remembrance. And also disengaging of the brain, disengaging of the mind, disengaging of feelings. Thoughts will always come and go.
Mm-hmm.
They always come and go. Circumstances always come and go.
Yes. To be able to be in the same time observers, right? Like you're mentioning, and also the player of the situation in the same time, right? We have this ability to be the observer and the player in the same time.
Yeah. But know what you're playing with.
Mm-hmm.
Become aware of what you're playing with. Is it something old?
Yes.
Or is it a piece of your heart? Is it your inner dynamic intelligence? What are you playing with?
Mm-hmm.
And believe me, it does get to a point where at some point in time in people's lives where they will need to look at this, and when they do, it's usually at a critical point of suffering.
Yes.
So this is where the dynamic of opposites start playing.
Yes. Coming
mm-hmm.
full circle to the beginning of the conversation when we talked about the dynamics, the duality. And I see that the birds are joining us.
I love my birds here.
Your
They're
birds.
so beautiful.
And we could sit here and talk all day, but I would say that today we definitely had a good opportunity to learn from you, to learn a little bit about your story, to learn your perspective on sound and how sound and meditation has the ability. It's a powerful tool of healing mind, body. Correct? And I would like to end our conversation today, and we're going to pick it up next week and go deeper into perhaps the definition of pain and suffering, and come up with more concrete steps what people can do, and also sing for us and give us a sample of your sound and how sound healed you. And for today, before we go, I would like to tell people that they can find you at www.vimalamura.com. That's where your retreats are, your poetry, your music, your all wealth of information is there. I look at you as a beautiful Renaissance soul that is so gifted in so many ways. And I would like, if you would like to close this conversation today with one of your poems, because I met you as a poet, and I love the sound. I love to listen to the voice of your sound and how you play your music. But when I hear your poetry as a poet, I'm so connected to how you use words You're a master of words, and pairing words with feelings, with something that is not necessarily of this world, although you talk about love and the beloved. I feel it comes from a different place. And when I read your poetry, it takes me someplace that is not here. And it's not an escape, because I'm not sure that we want to escape. It's not an escape, but it's a beautiful place where poetry can take us if we use words from that divine, that intelligent mind we talked about. And I would like us to end our conversation today with a poem, and let us journey with you.
Thank you for having me, Karina. Mahalo nui loa. It's such a blessing to have conversations with Karina.
Thank you very much.
You just bring out the best in everybody. What a gift. Thank you. This poem is from one of my books called Golden Soul. And I have to align it here. Beloved, cradled in your arms, all is done before asking. Forgiveness emptied my heart into yours, giving me new breath. When silence captured me in its miracle, we merged in your bed of love, married in the twilight of remembrance, we become one. Beloved, you chose me before birth. I chose you and became your life. Imbued in the world beyond light, never to stray from love, I am led. For cradled in your arms, all is done before asking. Mahalo nui loa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vima, and gratitude for your poetry, for your wisdom, for sharing who you are with us. And I'm so looking forward to continue this conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. I really love this sharing and doing all of this wonderful stuff. Makes my life very full.
I feel my heart is full now. I feel like it's running over. I'm so grateful and so happy for this. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mahalo.